Warning, before we start the podcast episode, I want you to be warned that I will be talking about some heavy topics in this podcast episode, such as SA, sexual encounters and acts, and other things of that nature. If this is triggering to you, by the time we get to this time right here, you should leave the podcast. I'm not going to talk about it immediately because if you care about the podcast, I want you to be caught up. So there'll be some things that we talk about that's not that. But once it again becomes this time, you should leave because then we will be talking about these heavy topics. What's up, guys? Asus Beam here, and welcome back to another episode of the BeamCast. I don't know what episode this is. Yes, you can see my face. It's kind of like a rant vlog type video, but it's a podcast episode. Why isn't this audio? Only this episode we're dealing with some personal problems, and I can't go into my room right now to record on my PC and whatnot. Hopefully that will be resolved in the next couple of weeks. That's why there hasn't been much content this month at all, and I haven't done any streams. So there's that. But we'll be talking about multiple topics. This will be one of the heavier episodes like you saw in my trigger warning intro segment. But anyways, we got some topics to cover. So first things first, let's start with something fun before we get into the heavy shit. March Madness is here. And my bracket's already fucked. Yeah, I'm competing with my dad to to see who has the best bracket and whatnot, you know what I'm saying? But my bracket's fucked. I'm close with my dad in terms of that. It's very neck and neck, so I'm not too out of it already. And 3 of my final 4 are still alive, right? It's just one of them, for some reason, I went wild with it. I had McNeese in my final 4, and they lost in the first round, y'all. The other members of my final 4 was Illinois, Marquette, and North Carolina, right? And Illinois, and I had Illinois being Marquette in the championship. So I mean, I'm at least happy about that, but hey, I'll take this over last year, because last year 3 of my final 4 lost immediately. My championship last year was Arizona versus Houston, and Arizona lost in the first round. And I know I had Purdue making it to the Final Four. I can't remember who else I had in the Final Four that year, but it was something. So I'll take this year by far over last year, because last year my bracket was all crazy. But since my bracket's already busted, I want some chaos. I want NC State to win it all. Come on, NC State, you're an 11 seed. Let's see an 11 seed win the whole thing. It'd be nuts. It'd be crazy, and I'm here for it. Let me know what your guys' Final Four was. Let me know how your bracket's doing. Obviously, no bracket is perfect at the moment. Because it's never been done, and everyone lost their perfect bracket by the end of the first round. Thank you, Oakland, which I learned is a Michigan-based school, by the way. If you didn't know, the team that beat Kentucky in March Madness, Oakland, the Oakland Golden Grizzlies, I think is what they're called. They're based in Michigan. They're not a California team like I thought. But, yeah, Oakland fucked a bunch of people. So, let me know how your bracket is going. Let me know who's your championship, who you have them beating, what was your Final Four, you know what I'm saying? Let me see what y'all got. Second thing, check the new cut though. Yeah, I got the line there, but it's asymmetrical. It's a nice cut. I like it. My girlfriend likes it, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, March Madness. As for my women's bracket is doing so much worse. Oh my god. My women's bracket, I had Oklahoma versus Tennessee and Iowa versus Virginia Tech for my Final Four, and then with Iowa beating Tennessee for the championship. I'm wrong. Very wrong. The only one in my Final Four that's still alive is Iowa, my champion. Which, I mean, hey, I'll take it. But, It could have been so much better. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on! You know what I'm saying? But, yeah, my women's bracket is bad. But I think Caitlin Clark will go out with a bang in college, go to the WNBA, and do her thing there, potentially. You know what I'm saying? If you did a women's bracket, let me know how yours, did, how yours is like, as yours is doing. I got Iowa winning the whole thing. What else? It's so weird because I gotta think about topics that I want to talk about. Because normally I got a list of topics to touch up on, but like I don't have one this time because it's like I'm doing like this, this setup. But anyways, new mixtape is out now. I dropped it on the 1st, and this is damn near the end of the month. So yeah, but I dropped it on March 1st. It is called Unaliving Myself. Sounds fun. It's not actually called that, but I'm trying to dance around YouTube TOS a little bit. So it's called that word, unaliving. Obviously, you know what it means. It's a word that starts with a K. Myself sounds fun. It is an experimental, sad mixtape. We'll be entering a new era of harder music after this. Once I'm able to start recording some more music again. But it has been generally, it hasn't performed the greatest, but it's been generally solidly received. I'm quite proud of it. It's a new sound. It was experimental. I fuck with it, and I hope you guys will fuck with it too. It is sad. It is, so do keep that in mind. But I hope you guys will enjoy that mixtape, and then we'll be going into an era of just me wanting to smoke with everybody. Speaking of which, fucking Kendrick out of here dissing J. Cole and Drake. Like, damn. Like, I knew Kendrick and Drake had issues, but like I didn't expect him to diss J. Cole, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people were like, oh well, I don't think he dissed J. Cole, I think he was mainly going after Drake. And yeah, I do mainly think he was going after Drake, like with the Pet Sematary thing. But like, motherfuck the big three. It's just Big Me. Like, that's still a diss at J. Cole. He's said the big three. It's still a diss. First person shooter, that's the song with J. Cole and Drake. Like, he was going at both of them. You could argue that the time to see if he's a problem line is about J. Cole, because J. Cole's never really been any beef outside of his little thing with Lil Pump. And even then, that wasn't really a beef, you know what I mean? It was just Pump clout chasing, Cole recognizing that, and then just addressing it, basically, on wax, right? He's never really been in any rap beef, but he's always says, like, oh, I'm not one to beef with, I'm not one to mess with, stuff like that, right? And, so that could be a diss at J. Cole with Kendrick saying, like, let's see if he's actually about that. Let's see, you know what I'm saying? I think they don't want, I don't think either of them want to be remembered as, like, the big three. I think they're all trying to be like, I want to be number one. You know what I'm saying? And then I feel like the reason Kendrick's dissing both of them is not only did he have problems with Drake beforehand, but like they collaborated on a track, and specifically the reason why he's going at J. Cole is like, one, you go in and collaborate with a motherfucker that you already know I don't really fuck with like that, right? Two, you shout out the big three, you name drop me in this track, but say you feeling more like Muhammad Ali, right? Basically, J. Cole was like, yeah, shout out the big three, shout out Drake, shout out Kendrick, right? But I'm the best. You know what I'm saying? That's what J. Cole was basically saying, right? And I feel like Kendrick saw that as like some sort of disrespect, because like, how you gonna name drop me? How you gonna shout out me on a track with someone I don't really fuck with like that, but then say you the best out of all three of us, right? And the reason that wouldn't be disrespectful towards Drake is because it was on Drake's song. You know what I'm saying? Right? So I feel like that might be why Kendrick is a little bit like, Cole, the fuck? You know what I'm saying? We'll see if Cole decides to respond or whatever. We'll see if Drake does. I'm assuming Drake will. Drake already responded in terms of a concert, but let's see him like go on wax. Drake, go on wax. I think Kendrick would destroy you, but go on wax. You know what I'm saying? Like that's all. That's all I want. I just want to be entertained. You know what I'm saying? Another thing I want to talk about. NFL, man. The NFL, what the fuck are you doing? Why did you ban the hip drop tackle? There's no reason for it. The kickoff rules, they look fine outside of the, no more surprise onside kicks. Like, man, fuck off with that shit. You know what I'm saying? They're making very stupid rules at the moment and rule changes. And I hope this gets reversed damn near immediately by the following season after next. It's ridiculous. I don't like it. Most people don't like it. I'll still keep up with it just because, like, I love football, but I feel like next season's going to be really bad. You know what I'm saying? It's disappointing to see if you know what I'm saying? Like, the UFL should be fun though, and no, which actually starts this weekend. That's crazy. That starts on the 30th, so that's wild. What else do we want to talk about here? NHL playoffs are coming up. Hopefully, my Red Wings make it. We've had a solid season this year. We look a little bit better than we have in years past. Hopefully we can get back to winning Stanley Cups in the next couple of years. Hey, Red Wings, come on, let's do it. Let's do it, Red Wings. Come on. Come on now. Let's win more Stanley Cups now. Come on. Please. Yay? Nay? No? I think yay. I mean, you got 11 of them. You got 11 of them. You got the third most. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't believe Toronto's still ahead of us. Like, fuck Toronto. Like, why are the Maple Leafs still ahead of us and they haven't won one in 50 years? Like, come on, Red Wings. Let's win 3 more at least so we can be in second place. The reason why I'd be fine with that is the Canadians have, like, 20 plus. Ridiculous. But, like, come on, Red Wings. Let's win a few. Let's win a few. Like, this, you know. Come on now. Hey, 3-peat. Let's do it. 3-peat. Let's do it. Come on. You know what I'm saying? Come on. Last season was wild though with the Panthers upsetting the Bruins in the playoffs and going all the way to the finals and losing in 6 games to Vegas and whatnot. Vegas winning their first Stanley Cup in 6 years of existence, which is crazy. Then you got the fucking Canucks. The Canucks. There we go. Vancouver Canucks have looked solid, and I'm not gonna lie. They might be my Stanley Cup pick this year. I might pick the Canucks to win the Stanley Cup this year. You call me crazy all you want, but like the Canucks, they've looked good this year. So the Vancouver Canucks could very well win their first Stanley Cup. And if you wonder what a Canuck is, it's just another term for Canadian. I learned that like last year. I was like, wait, what? I was like, a Canuck is another name for an orca because like their logo has like an orca breaking out of some ice and it's like shaped like a C, you know? But no, they just did that to do it. A Canuck is just another term for Canadian. So you got the Vancouver Canucks, which is just the Vancouver Canadians, and then the Montreal Canadiens, which is the Montreal Canadiens. Can we get a team called the Americans? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, you got the Capitals, rename them the Americans. You know what I'm saying? Come on. Well, at the same time, though, you got an Ottawa team in Canada, and it's not called the Canadians, it's called the Senators, which is in thematic with, the fact that Ottawa is the capital and you got the Senate of Canada and whatnot, but like their logo is more inspired by Roman senators and stuff like that. Edmonton Oilers, Calgary Flames, the Seattle Kraken, I wonder when they'll win their first. Will they follow they're not following the same thing as Vegas. Will they take a more like longer rebuild approach like most expansion teams do in sports history, or will they like come out of nowhere one year? You know what I'm saying? Like it'd be interesting to see what Seattle does, the Seattle Kraken. Then you got the Ducks, the Kings, but bunch of teams in the NHL. It'd be cool to see the Kings go on another run. I don't mind the Kings. You know what I'm saying? I just want like my Red Wings. Anyways, that's me talking about the fucking NHL for no damn reason. MLB starts soon. NBA Finals. Ooh, yes, I want to talk about this because me and my friend have been having multiple debates about this shit. So, one, as of right now, I think the finals will be Nuggets versus Cavs. I don't think the Celtics will get there. One, I'm a hater. I'm a Lakers fan. Fuck Boston. I don't like the Celtics, and it should be called the Celtics. I'm sorry. Like, I know officially they're the Boston Celtics, but like that's because you were mispronouncing it wrong. It's Celtic. But anyways, fuck the Boston Celtics. I'm a hater. I don't want y'all to make it. And I would say the Bucks, but here's my problem. It's Doc Rivers. I don't know why they fired their coach. I don't know why they hired Doc Rivers in his place. It's Doc Rivers. I'm not trusting Doc Rivers in the playoffs. I'm not. So, as of right now, I'm saying the Nuggets will make it back because the Timberwolves look really good, but like I don't trust them. The Thunder are great, but there's inexperience when it comes to the playoffs in there. The Lakers always got a shot. Yeah, I'm kind of biased, but the Lakers do still always have a shot. The Heat always have a shot in the East just because Butler is Butler. But, good old Jimmy Butler. But I think I'm going to go with the Cavs out of the East. Yeah, I know it's kind of random, but they're just a well-rounded team. And then I think the Nuggets out West are just a good team. They're the defending champs, stuff like that. And I kind of trust them the most out of all the teams out West to make it back to to make it to the finals. I would say probably Nuggets in 6. I would probably say Nuggets in 6. Because outside of like the 2004 Pistons, the well-rounded teams like the Cavs, they make the runs, but they don't win it. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't win. They make the runs, but they don't win. Again, the 2004 Pistons are kind of like an anomaly. But like not a fluke, just an anomaly. Because they made it back to the finals the following year and took it to 7 games. So they weren't a fluke. Just weird in terms of NBA lore and history, right? So like I feel confident in picking the Cavs to make it to the finals, but not winning it. I don't think anyone could realistically pick them to win it. I don't think the Knicks will do shit. It's the Knicks. What more do I have to say? It's the Knicks. What are you waiting for? Wait, what? Do you want me to say something about the Knicks? Anything positive? Like, no, it's the Knicks. They ain't gonna do shit. I would trust Doc Rivers to make it to the finals before the fucking Knicks. You kidding me? No. I guess there's your sports segments, and whatnot. So, you were warned before the podcast episode officially started, but now is the time to go away, as we will be talking about a couple of serious things. I will be talking about my false allegation story, consent, and, other things that I have seen, as this is something I'm passionate about, and I feel like things are being forgotten or twisted in bad ways. I will save my story for the end of it, My false accusation story. But I feel like this is something that I want to share on my platform, and because I see a lot of insane takes that are not good. You know what I'm saying? Like, these takes just aren't it. So, first, let me start with consent. Because I have seen super insane takes on Twitter. Some people have said that they think cuddling, just in general, is consent for anything like sexual. No. It's not. It can progress from cuddling, right? And I will say, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, again, cuddling in general isn't an invitation for anything sexual, but, like, spooning and, like, shoulder-to-shoulder cuddling are definitely different. You know what I mean? Like, if you're spooning, right? Like, if you're spooning a girl, it's almost kind of expected, but, like, still, it's not an invitation. And to suggest it's an invitation is insane. Same thing with smiling. I know different cultures might have something different, like Brittany Simon or whatever her name is, great YouTuber. She, like, in Croatia, smiling is an invitation for someone to come up and talk to you. While in America, if you smile and say hi, it's normal, especially if you're in the Midwest. That's just what we do. We just say hi to everybody we see on the fucking street. But in general, I believe, like, these things aren't consent. And by the way, I want to preface, I'm not talking about any specific massive situation right now. I do know there's situations going on Twitter. And obviously me talking about consent is because of one specific situation. I'm not talking about that situation because I just don't want to. But I want to give my take on certain things I've been seeing being said as, like, narratives and whatnot. However, what I will say is not all consent is verbal. Body language consent is a thing. Nonverbal consent is a thing. Hate me all you want. Mostly, though, in committed relationships. Me and my girlfriend, I'm not going to get into many details, but me and my girlfriend have, done things. But not every time have we explicitly asked, like, hey, do you want to, hey, is this okay? Like, maybe the first couple times and here and there, yes. Like, simply asking, like, is this okay? Right. You know what I mean? But not every time is there something, like, verbal, like when I'm talking to my girlfriend and sometimes I want to, like, just kiss her, like, sometimes I'll just, move my hand, move her chin and, like, go in for a kiss, right? And she'll reciprocate and come in with the kiss. That is nonverbal consent. Now, if she pushed me away and I tried to push for the kiss, then that wouldn't be right of me, right? And her pushing me away would be nonverbal no/nonverbal non-consent, right? Like, these things exist. Again, that isn't a committed relationship, right? But I think the idea that all consent needs to be verbal is one that is, quite frankly, unhuman. And I feel like a lot of people who do believe all consent needs to be verbal are either young or chronically online. There is such thing as nonverbal consent. Now, I will say, nonverbal consent doesn't need to be in a committed relationship all the time, right? Because obviously you can have, like, fuck buddies and shit like that. But even not then, right? If I was single and I went to the bar and I'm sitting there and some girl comes sit next to me and starts touching on my arm and, like, being like, hey, handsome, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to think we're probably going to get somewhere that night. You know what I mean? That's just normal human shit. If, like, you know what I mean? Obviously, I'm not going to make an instant move to grab her or whatever and, like, you know, and stuff like that. But that's still obviously nonverbal interest and is going to be like, all right, let me gauge when to make the next move. Let me gauge when it's the best time because of, you know, the setting. Let me gauge how she is feeling about this interaction, stuff like that. Body language, you know, and stuff like that. Your eyes, stuff like that. That can tell a lot. And that can tell more than actually words, too, sometimes, because people lie. And we'll get more into that in a bit, right? You know? So I definitely think saying all consent has to be verbal isn't true. It's just not. Mainly within committed relationships. And again, I'm not talking about any specific situation. I'm just bringing the nuance into it. Another thing I want to talk about, actually, is drunkenness. How does consent work when, you know, people are drunk? Well, if one person is drunk and one person is sober, and the drunk person is, like, starting to get touchy and feely with the sober person who's trying to have sex, and the sober person gives in, legally that would still be and, like, the drunk person then feels like assaulted and taken advantage of the next day. Legally, that is sexual assault, that, you know, and whatnot, because they were drunk and they were going for something that if they were sober probably didn't want, right? If they were both sober, obviously, you know, that's consent, right? You know, touch and feely, all that, right? Same situation. Now let's take the same situation where you have one drunk person going to another drunk person being touchy-feely, and it's being reciprocated, right? As long as it's being reciprocated, right? And then the next day, one of them feels sexually assaulted. It wouldn't be sexual assault. I want people to understand that when both parties are drunk, it matters because you have fucking like, let you know, if a, like, let me try to word this better. If a girl is drunk and makes a move on a sober guy and the sober guy gives in and the girl feels like that was unwanted and she was taken advantage of, then yes, that would be defined as sexual assault. If, you know, they were both sober, the girl made a move on the guy reciprocated, stuff like that. Again, this is assuming the guy reciprocates, right? Then yeah, that's consent and they're both sober, so it doesn't matter, right? Obviously, and let's flip the rules here. If a drunk guy is making a move on a sober girl and the sober girl decides to do something, that's sexual assault if the guy didn't want it, you know, right? Once they become sober and realize, oh shit, like, I was drunk, I feel taken, like, yeah, legally that's sexual assault, morally that's sexual assault. And say, you know, and the sober thing, if the guy's making the move and the girl's reciprocating, that's not sexual assault. Drunkenness, when it comes to consent, is all about how drunk is each party. Because if you have a sober and drunk person, then it'd be sexual assault if the person figures that is unwanted, right? If the person was drunk, if let's say these are like a couple, right? Let's say these two people are a couple, and they discuss, like, yeah, if I'm drunk and I make a move on you, I'm fine with it, then it's obviously consented and stuff because it was consented while sober. But, like, yeah, we're not talking about these nuanced stuff. Let's make it black and white. And I'm sorry I'm jumping all over the place. A girl is drunk, guy is sober. They bang. Girl feels that was unwanted, feels taken advantage of afterwards. That is sexual assault due to the fact that the guy was sober, right? If both are sober, girl makes move on guy reciprocates, they bang, and the girl regrets it later, that's simply regret, not sexual assault. If both are drunk, girl makes move on guy, drunk girl makes a move on drunk guy reciprocates, they bang, girl regrets it later, I'm sorry, that is not sexual assault. because you are both drunk. Drunkenness, when it comes to consent, is a matter of, are you guys on the same mindset? Are you guys on the same wavelength, right? Because a drunk man can't consent and a drunk woman can't consent, right? But if they're both drunk at the same time, it cancels out, right? Because they're on the same... Now, obviously, if one guy's lightly drunk and another girl's blackout drunk, then it's the same thing as like drunk and sober and stuff like that. But if they're similar levels of drunkenness, they're on the same mind frame, same wavelength, therefore allowing it to be consented to, because both thought processes of them are warped. And you can't really punish someone for a warped mindset. That's why you don't, you can't punish a drunk person for making a move on a sober person and the sober person reciprocating, right? That's the reason if a sober person takes advantage of a drunk person, it's sexual assault, right? But you also got to realize, if both parties are drunk, it's the same as if both parties are sober. Just the only difference is both of them are fucked up in the head, but again, it cancels out. If you're mad at that, I'm sorry, you're just wrong. I'm not sorry. Fuck you. You're wrong, right? Drunkenness is all dependent on how drunk is each person in the interaction, okay? Can't focus on one person being drunk if both people are drunk. If both people are drunk, doesn't matter. Throw it out the fucking window, okay? All right. So, there's that. When it comes to consent. Another thing is, convincing oneself it is worth it for something in return, right? This is a tricky one, because coercion isn't consent. If a man's going up to a woman, or if a woman's going up to a man saying, "Hey, if you don't do this, if you don't, have sex with me, I'll fire you," right? Like, let's say this is your boss going up to you, right? And they're like, "If you don't have sex with me, I'll fire you. You'll lose your job." That's sexual assault. That's illegal. Press charges, stuff like that, right? But let's say you go up to your boss being like, "Hey, I want a raise. I'm willing to have sex for a raise." And you have sex, that is still consent. Because that is business. It's a very dirty consent, but it's still consent. Because you convinced yourself it is worth it for something else. Right? You may not want to do it with that person, but you're like, this might be worth it. You know what I'm saying? Right? This is why you got to use your voice, right? If you're interacting with somebody and you feel like what they're doing you don't exactly want, but you're like, "Oh, this is what and you convince yourself thinking, "Oh, this is what I have to do to be successful," or whatever, then that's on you, I would say, because you convinced yourself that it was, you didn't voice you were uncomfortable. You convinced yourself that it is okay, it was fine, because you would get something in return. Very dirty type of consent, but consent nonetheless. I know that's probably going to be extremely controversial, but I think that's just kind of common sense. Not really common sense, but there's non-consent and then there's business. There's using, there's going to someone being threatening about it. Again, your boss going to you saying, "Have sex with me or you'll lose your job," right? That's coercion. That's not, that's illegal. That's sexual assault, stuff like that. Meanwhile, if the employee is like, you know, thinks of this first, right? Like if the boss goes up to the employee and says, like, you know, have sex with me or lose your job, and the employee says yes, that's coercion, right? That's not consent. But if the employee thinks, I want a raise, maybe I should fuck my boss for a raise, that's consent. If you are hanging out with somebody and they're making you uncomfortable because they're trying to advance things, they're not being super crazy about it, right? But you're uncomfortable, you know, because you're, for whatever reason, like, let's say they, like, went in for a kiss, and you, like, you know, were like, nah, but, like, and they respected that, no, but you're uncomfortable, you were uncomfortable by the kiss, but then, like, you know, after, like, 3 minutes, you're like, well, they do got a lot of money, so I guess we can go ahead, and you decide to kiss them. That's you convincing yourself that it's worth it for something in return, and that is still a dirty type of consent. It's a dirty consent, but it's consent. I hope that makes sense. I already know that might get clipped out of context, but, like, basically I'm saying, if someone of power or your boss comes up to you saying, do this or I'll do this, coercion, not consent, sexual assault. But if the employee or, like, you know, just somebody talking to somebody of power, and, you know, you're uncomfortable, you don't really want to do it, but you're like, yeah, it might be worth it because I get this, that's a dirty consent, but a consent nonetheless. Right? Another thing is, obviously, if you are fine with something in the moment and then months down the line you regret it, that's not sexual assault. Now, obviously, you don't necessarily need to realize you're being sexually assaulted till later, right? Like, you can get sexually assaulted and be just completely asleep and then hear later that you got sexually assaulted, right? You know, obviously, that is, like, and other stuff. But let's say you had sex with somebody, but, you know, you and that person's relationship went wrong or something, and now you regret you had sex with them. You can't go around and call that sexual assault. Or, well, it's not sexual assault in that case, you know, because it's not. But, like, I'm saying sexual assault because that's easier to say than the other word, rape, right? There we go, rape. You know, like, you can't, if you had sex with somebody consensually, then stuff goes wrong later and then you regret it, you can't go around calling that rape or sexual assault or whatever, right? Because it was still consensual, you just regret it now. Like, I lost my V card with my ex, and the way things ended between me and her is really nasty. We'll get to it, but I'm not going around calling, and I do regret, you know, losing my V card to her and doing these things with her, but I'm not going around saying she raped me, you know what I mean? Because she didn't. You know, I was willing and stuff like that. I just regret it now. And you're fine to regret stuff, but you also can't ruin somebody else's life or say they're this or that just because you regret it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so I don't know. I think a lot of people forget there are, like, nuanced things. Like, there's body language for consent. There is, you know, there is a such thing as convincing oneself that a sexual act will be worth it for something in return, in which case is a very dirty, dark type of consent, but consent. You know, Brianna Simons worded it way better. I can't, like, remember how she worded it, but, like, basically, if you convince yourself a sexual act is worth it for something in return without being coerced into thinking that way, then I hear consent. There you go. Hopefully that makes sense. And then obviously, like, simple things aren't always consent for other things. Other things I want to address, obviously animals can't consent. I'm talking to you zoophiles. Kids can't consent and stuff like that. But that's common knowledge. People who disagree with stuff like that are just sick fucks and should be in jail and all that. But, so yeah. The next thing I want to get to is some deranged takes I have seen. Listen, if you are a victim, my heart goes out to you. But if you have no evidence, while that does suck, you have to be willing to understand why not everyone will automatically believe you. I know not every victim has evidence, but we can't just crucify someone because somebody else said they're a bad person. Look at Quite. Look at Slazzo. Look at Angry Reactions Now, right? Look at Inquisitor, who unalived himself because of false allegations. People lie. False allegations exist. And that's why people harp on evidence. I know stuff like this is hard to prove, right? And but evidence is needed and whatnot. That's why I always say stay neutral, because you don't want to support a potential abuser, but you also don't want to support a potential false accuser, which in my opinion, if you falsely accuse someone, you're an abuser in your own right. It causes emotional and mental abuse and social abuse, if you get what I'm saying, like social damage and whatnot. We'll get to that in a bit. But again, if you are a victim, my heart goes out to you. But do understand when people are like, where's the evidence? Because false allegations are way too prominent. Sexual assault is way too prominent in general. But false allegations are way too prominent to believe just words. I think support and believe victims is a good thing. You just have to know who the victim is. Because the victim isn't always the accuser. Sometimes the victim is the accused. Quite is the perfect example. He was accused of, sexual assault. Turns out he was the victim of emotional and mental abuse and whatnot like that. So, yes, support and believe victims. Just gotta know who the victim is. And evidence is key. Saying stuff like, what the fuck do you mean you want evidence? And victims shouldn't need evidence to be believed. It's insane. It's not guilty till proven innocent. It is innocent till proven guilty for the reason of false allegations. They are real and they suck. And before you say 0.1% of allegations are false, not true. Not true in the slightest, okay? 2 to 10% of allegations are proven, that go to court, are proven false, okay? 2 to 10%. So that is a small, and again, that's in court. So you got a sample size of accusations that go to court. So these are only ones that go to court. These same people who say 0.1% of allegations are false also say, oh, not every accusation goes to court. Which is true. Not every accusation does go to court. Mine didn't. And I'll get to that. So one, you're already limiting the amount of accusations down to a subset that went to court. And 2 to 10% of those are proven false. Now, to sit here and say, oh, that means 98 to 90% are proven true. That's not true either. Sadly, about the same amount, 2 to 10%, are proven true. That means you have anywhere from 96 to 80% of allegations in court that are just thrown out because there's no proof either way. That means some of those are sadly people who never got justice and were true allegations, but that also means some of those were false allegations, and now the person's reputation is ruined because they couldn't prove they were false, but at least they're not in jail, right? So, and again, that's only the ones in court. There's multiple other allegations that don't go to court that are false. Quites didn't go to court. Slazos didn't go to court, right? These were false allegations. Pyrocynicals didn't go to court. These are false allegations, okay? False allegations. Inquisitors didn't go to court. These are 4 false allegations that didn't go to court. So to say 0.1% of allegations are false is just wrong. Because, 1, where are you getting the statistic from? 2, because to me that just means blindly believing people. 2, the statistic that was originally reported was 2 to 10% in court are proven false. So you're not accounting for the ones that went to court, not accounting for the ones that weren't proven either way that could be false. There's false allegations are more than you think. Again, I do understand actual sexual assault happens more than false allegations, but that doesn't mean false allegations aren't a problem, and that doesn't mean ignore false allegations because sexual assault exists. Both can be addressed, both can be talked about. Okay? Teddy, what are you doing? But that means both, problems can be talked about, okay? We don't ignore, we don't ignore murderers because sexual assault exists. So why should we ignore false accusations because sexual assault exists, right? You know what I'm saying? These things do happen. Both are a problem. Both can be addressed. And by the way, painting it as 2% or like 0.1% is very disingenuous because it's trying to say, oh, it doesn't happen all that often. One, again, we already addressed that it's not 0.1%, but 2, I feel like percentages are used very disingenuously because a lot of people say, oh, 0.1% means it's rare. 0.1% can still be millions, thousands, and millions of false allegations. You know that, right? Obviously, it's probably not millions, but it's definitely a couple 100,000 if in 0.1. But again, it's not 0.1%. It's higher than that. It's gotten higher as the years go on. You know what I mean? So it is hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of false allegations. Sure, there's a higher percentage of actual sexual assault cases and victims than there are false allegation cases and victims. But that's still thousands of millions on both sides, and both are a problem for that reason. And another thing, so using the guilty till proven innocent mindset is super stupid. Trying to suggest that fucking, being scared of, false allegations is dumb. And trying to say talking about false allegations is like, you're so fucking stupid. You're so dumb. You are so stupid. Another thing people are gonna hate. I think false allegations can damn near be just as harmful as sexual assault. False sexual assault allegations can be damn near just as harmful. And let me explain before you guys get your pitchforks up. If someone is sexually assaulted or raped, they now live with that trauma for the rest of their lives. And if they don't get their justice, it's even worse, right? And they'll never be the same again. It's very bad damage, horrible. The reason why I say false allegations of rape or sexual assault is just as bad is not only is it really traumatic, I would fucking know, And I got lucky. I got off. I didn't go to jail. You know what I mean? Because it was thrown out the window quick, right before the school could even call the fucking police. You know. But fucking, like, you know, let's say someone, like, for example, there was a person who got falsely accused. He would have been an amazing athlete, right? He was a top tier high school recruit, and coming out of high school, he got falsely accused, and he spent 6 years in jail until the girl just came out and said, oh, didn't happen. That man lost millions of dollars, 6 years of his life, and had to deal with not only a traumatic experience of being falsely accused and not being believed, traumatic experience of being in jail. And I don't know if you know, but sexual assaulters and rapists and stuff like that, they get treated horribly in jail, right? These are the people that get raped in jail. Rapists get raped in jail, right? So if you get if someone gets falsely accused and goes to jail for so many years, there's a high probability that they'll be raped in jail. Now they're a rape victim and a false accusation victim. And not to mention the social impact false accusations have once they're proven false is it makes it harder to believe actual victims of rape and sexual assault. So yeah, I am going to say false allegations do just as much damage as actual rape and sexual assault. Sure, there may be some cases where, like me, I got falsely accused. I didn't go to jail. Nothing crazy happened. All I had was like the trauma. And yeah, I would say a rape or sexual assault survivor has more trauma than me and whatnot, right? But there are cases where I would say, yeah, false allegations are just as harmful. Because you send an innocent person to jail. They potentially get raped themselves in jail. They lose so much fucking money if they're talented. They lose their career. They lose friends. They lose family. You know, stuff like that. And then it just comes out, oh, it's false, and nothing fucking happens. And it's just like, one, I think if you were falsely accused and you went to jail, you're entitled to millions of fucking dollars. Like at least 10 mil every year you were in jail. I'm not kidding. Second, I believe that the person who falsely accused the person should serve not only the amount of time that person served, plus double it. The person who came out of jail, right, at 20 some years old after 6 years of being in jail because he got falsely accused, that woman that falsely accused him, 12 years of jail. Not playing. I'm not playing about this. Okay? Then again, like I said, false allegations make it harder for actual victims to come out because it makes it harder for us to believe them and shit like that. So if you don't think false allegations do just as much damage as actual sexual assault and rape, you're looking at it through the lens of, an abuser versus a liar. But if you're willing to lie on that level, you are an abuser in yourself. You are causing emotional and mental abuse and potentially sending someone to jail for a crime they didn't do, and they might actually get sexually assaulted or raped or abused that you claim but didn't happen, right? Fuck you if you're a false accuser or falsely accused anybody in your fucking life. Like, genuinely, you deserve the worst, okay? I'm not playing. And now we'll get to my story. I have talked about this privately with people. I have talked about this in music because I finally willed up the courage to talk about this because it was something I was scared to talk about because I know how the internet and the world treats accusations like this. They just blindly believe them. So I didn't outwardly say I was falsely accused. I hinted towards it in music before, but I never outwardly said I was falsely accused until like this year. And, you know, my false accusations happened in October of 2022, you know. Because I know how people treat this sort of thing. The story goes that, so some backstory is I was dating this girl. We're not gonna name names. I was dating this girl, and we were dating for 7 months. We dated for 7 months, but she had a bad like home life and whatnot. I wanted to get her emancipated and stuff like that. But I could sense distancing and stuff like that. But like, for example, one thing she did was she started talking to, she had blocked this guy because I asked her to. This guy that she was talking, you know, she was friends with this guy, but this guy was just outright disrespecting boundaries, saying like, oh, can I fuck you? And I was like, can you not talk to him? She did, but she became friends with him again later, and I was not happy about it, and I was like, please don't, but she didn't listen, right? You know, I should have left then, but fast forward a few months, right? A few months later in October, we break up, but then like the very next day, she calls me saying her grandma forced her. So we got back together. And 5 days later, this is when this happened. We're going to school, and she told me she was moving to Virginia that night. Yada, yada, yada. And then I said, okay, that's cool. I can just come pick you up when you graduate high school. And she said, actually, no, I'm not going to that college. There's like actually a college down there I want to go to. Yada, yada, yada. So I'd be staying down there. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, wait. And her grandparents were strict. I was like, wait, what if your grandparents don't let you take your phone? What if your grandparents don't let you take your phone with you after you graduate? I would have no way to talk to you. Am I just expected to sit here with 4 years with no word? You know? And she basically said, oh, I'm not focused on a relationship right now. I'm focused on me. Which just felt like a spit in the face after 5 days after the whole false alarm breakup. You know what I mean? So I kind of started crying. I was upset. Because how are you going to say that after something like that happened? And we're not even a year or 2 years or anything like that into the relationship anyways. And for some context, the night before this, by the way, she told me she was deleting Snapchat. And I noticed on Snapchat I was unadded after she said this. We still talked that night on like the phone, very scarcely. She normally would like stop talking to me after like 8 because she was going to bed, and that's when she had to give her phone. But she stopped talking to me at like 6. But like, I noticed I was unadded on Snapchat. I was like, that's weird, because the only reason I would be unadded is if you deleted the account. But she didn't delete the account because the account was still there. So I was confused, and I was going to bring it up, but I wasn't thinking about it. Right? And I was especially confused because I was like, you could just unadd the people, because the reason she wanted to delete Snapchat was, oh, I have too many people on here. Right? Then... so we get to school after like that whole, oh, what about your phone thing, right? We were headed to breakfast, and I saw in the corner of my eye, because I was just behind her, that she was on her phone on Snapchat. She looks behind, saw that I noticed, and immediately closed it. Now I know something's up. So I asked to check her phone. And before you guys say that's toxic or whatever, I think that, I think if you have to ever ask to check the phone, you should just end the relationship. But two, the reason why I did this is we agreed when we got together that if we wanted to check each other's phones, we would just cough it up because we have nothing to hide. And she wasn't coughing it up. This confirmed to me she had something to hide. And basically we're going at it like all day, right? And I'm not trying to argue with her. I'm texting her on her phone number, right? And by the way, we're in the middle school lab instead of the high school lab afterwards, right? And she's not and she's not sitting next to me like she normally does and stuff like that, right? And we're in the middle school lab because there's like a birthday party for one of the middle schoolers, so we were just all in there, right? Then she so I'm trying to talk to her about this on the phone number so we don't cause a scene, you know? I'm very obviously upset, but I don't want to cause a scene. And she's just ignoring me, showing the text to her phone, her friend, which really pissed me off because I didn't like people inserting themselves in our relationship. Eventually I sit next to her and I'm like trying to ask her, and she's like, can we talk about this later? And by the way, before you say, why were you trying to talk to her about this at school? Because one, her grandparents took her phone at night, supposedly. And two, after school she normally went to the gym. So I knew after school she was going to be busy with the gym, have a little bit of time. She was going to a party, like a go-away party with all her friends, after that little time period in between. And that little time period was going to be like 20 minutes, and 20 minutes wasn't going to be enough to talk about this. And then after that party, which was supposedly ended by 10, she was supposedly going to Virginia. And obviously her grandparents would have taken her phone supposedly by then because they normally took it at 8, right? So to me, the only time to talk about it was at school, right? And eventually, like the principal, in a sense, great guy, by the way. He's like, hey, can you move? And I kind of got a little snippy. I was like, I'm tired of people inserting themselves in my relationship, but I moved because I didn't want to get in trouble. Eventually, basically, the vice principal. Again, these aren't their actual rules because I went to a online program, but you can go in person. It's complicated. I'm not going to bother explaining it. I'm just sitting there chilling. I'm not doing nothing, really. I'm just upset. And the vice principal basically comes in and was like, hey, Angel, can you come here? I'm like, man, what did I do? And she's like, no, you're not in trouble, yada, yada, yada. And she had me talk to a school counselor in another room. Now, while I'm in this room, two things happened. One, the vice principal talked to my ex, my girlfriend at the time. And all the high schoolers went into the high school lab, and I was not informed, right? But I was talking to the school counselor, and after talking about it, I felt a lot better, right? So I go back into the middle school lab, and the middle school mentor or whatever was like, oh, Angel, high schoolers in the high school lab. And obviously, I'm not dating a fucking middle schooler. So I see my ex, my girlfriend at the time, right there. And I'm like, hey, come on, let's go. And she was like, oh, no, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, oh, is your grandparents picking you up? Because she mentioned something about her grandparents picking her up early, right? And she's like, oh, yeah. So then I was like, okay, and I was like, hey, by the way, sorry, right? I was saying sorry for bothering her about I didn't really have anything to apologize for, but I was like, sorry, right? And she's like, can we talk about this later? And I was like, yeah, sorry, right? And in comes the vice principal, basically yelling at me to get into the high school lab. I go into a high school lab, and she's like saying, oh, you're not allowed to talk to her, this, that, the third, stuff like that, right? It just out of nowhere, right? And I'm confused because I didn't know she talked to her while I was in there or whatever, but she was going at me. I was like, oh, and this is all I was doing. I was asking, okay, you don't want me to talk to her. I was like, okay, is this in school and out of school? Is this just in school? How long is this for? I'm asking questions on what she wants me to do, so I do it properly. And then I'm like, and she's like, it's not up to you to call shots with what we're doing our students. And I'm just trying to explain, like, I wasn't trying to call shots, right? And she's yelling at me, and eventually it's like, you're going to keep talking back to me, we can send you home. This is when I snap. Keep in mind, I'm 17, and this person just got this job like a month or two ago. So I'm like, you did not just say this. We're not in elementary school. Treat me with some respect. I don't give a damn about elders respect shit. Treat me with some respect. And you'll get respect. You know what I'm saying? So I fucking snapped. I start yelling. I was like, fine, I can go home then. So we're walking down the hallway, and I'm just yelling. I'm mad. I'm upset, right? And eventually she was like, call shot, mention the call shots thing. And I was like, I wasn't trying to call no damn shot. And he was like, don't watch your mouth, don't you cuss. I was like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I was cussing this teacher out. Eventually I sat down in like the main principal's office, and he was talking. He was like, dude, what's wrong? And we called my mom, and I walked home and whatnot. She, and I was suspended for 1 day. The vice principal wanted me expelled because it was so disrespectful that I yelled at her and whatnot, right? But also because I skipped over this intentionally because I didn't know this at the time. But because while I was talking to the counselor, the vice principal talked to my ex, and my ex basically made it sound like I was forcing myself on her after she said no. Basically saying I was sexually harassing her, sexually assaulting her. When that just wasn't the case. Because I didn't even lay a finger on her that day. Outside of, like, on the shoulder, be like, hey, come on, let's go. You know what I mean? Outside of that. And so I walk home, and I was going to be expelled because of that, right? But the main principal, again, this guy's a saint. I was a relatively good kid. I got my work done. I was relatively quiet. So me being upset was like out of nowhere. So he knew it wasn't for no reason. Especially me being upset like that. He knew it wasn't for no reason. And the reason, and by the way, they were going to inform the police about this too. But they called my mom and basically started explaining it to her. And she was like, hold the phone, right? She was like, hold up. She explained that I was trying to pay for her emancipation. She explained that I was a virgin before my ex, right? She even named dates, like, times my girlfriend came here, right? And whatnot. And they checked this, right? She's like, oh yeah, she wasn't here that day. You know what I mean? Right? So the school decided to drop it because they realized it wasn't what they thought it was, which is why I never got arrested. Charges were never pressed and whatnot, because there was, one, she knew she was lying, and two, the school realized it wasn't what they thought it was. Of course, my ex went around spreading this around, like, I was an emotional abuser, stuff like that. But then, other people start saying the story straight, like some of my friends and my sister and whatnot, like, nah, this is actually what happened. You know what I mean? Right? But yeah, I almost got my life thrown away before it started. I almost went to, I almost got my life thrown away before I was 18, before I could graduate with honors. I'm throwing that in there just because why not? But, before I could graduate. Because I'm just gonna say this, I'm pretty sure she was cheating, hence why she was hiding the Snapchat and shit, So she wanted to save face for her wrongdoing, so she falsely accused me of sexual assault. and try to make me to seem the villain. And the reason, and I'm, I don't really have any proof of this. This sucks because I didn't know about her falsely accusing me until after, like months after. Like, I had disappeared from school for like 7 months because I was just so upset, right? I hated being there. I didn't want to see her, stuff like that, right? In fact, I finished school at home because I hated seeing her. I hated hearing her voice, stuff like that. I graduated a month late because of this, I didn't even get a graduation ceremony. And, but, it was, I did get off lucky because I didn't go to jail or nothing like that, but, she was trying to save face for her wrongdoing and falsely accused me. One thing I will say is, like, one of our contentious points at this time, before, like, this whole thing went down, is she became friends with a new guy through the, like, how she became friends with this one guy that was saying, became friends with this guy again that was saying, oh, I wanted to fuck you. She met this new guy named, we're not going to say his actual name, but, she became friends with this new guy through that previous guy, right? And she would talk about him constantly. And, like, me personally, I have no issue with, like, guy friends. You can be friends with guys. If you were friends with a guy beforehand, I don't care as long as they respect boundaries. If you become friends with my friends, I don't care because I trust they'll respect boundaries. But if you become friends with some guy, some new random dude that wasn't here before I wasn't in your life before I was, and I don't know them, again, I won't care as long as they respect boundaries, but I'm going to be skeptical. And the reason I was extra skeptical in this case, because she met him through a guy that previously was saying, I want to fuck you. But a coincidence is that this new friend had the same name as her supposed abuser, because when we got together, she told me she was raped by this guy named this specific name, and she became friends with this guy with the same name, spelt differently, but the same name, right? And normally when you get raped or abused or something like that, you tend to avoid other people named that, not because you think they are a bad person like that, but just because trauma, PTSD, and shit. So that should have been fishy to me when she became friends with this guy immediately. And the reason I point this out is that's not normal victim behavior. Obviously, there's not a perfect victim, but, like, I have a friend who was raped by a guy with a specific name, and he dropped another friend that they had because they had the same name as their abuser, So that's just not normal victim behavior. So so you see, like, discrepancy like that. You know what I'm saying? Again, I don't really have much proof because, again, I didn't know till, like, months later. And that's why I'm kind of, like, saying this story now, because one, I wanted to talk about it. I think it's important, but two, just because, like, it will be something I address. Like, if I get famous and, like, that my ex decides to be vindictive or whatever and try to ruin my career for no reason, it's like, okay, I've talked about this before, right? So I have no proof because, one, Snapchat removed stuff after, like, 24 hours, and two, again, I didn't figure this out months later. Had I known I was falsely accused immediately, I would have gone through, like, our Instagram DMs and screenshotted everything. I would have had our conversation, because my sister added her on Snapchat, and I basically took my sister's phone to, like, have, like, a conversation with her, like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? I would have had that conversation recorded and stuff like that. Like, I would have all that proof. But since I didn't know till like 5 months after it happened, that I was falsely accused, I sadly don't have much proof. The only proof I really have is when her and a couple of her friends, supposedly, one of her friends was calling me a bitch. Another one of her new friends, or I think maybe fiance or whatever, was like, hey, sorry about that previous guy. Your ex wanted to say she was sorry for how immature she was during our breakup. Like, I have screenshots of that. I don't have screenshots of her telling me she's sorry, because when I saw she followed me on Instagram, I blocked her immediately because I didn't want to deal with it. And I do have screenshots of what I told her when I took her back after that first false breakup, but I don't really have any other proof because I didn't find out months later. And this is why innocent till proven guilty is such an important thing. Now, I will say gladly, since I don't have any proof, she probably doesn't have any proof, to back up her claim. But yeah, that's my false accusation story. And that's why guilty till proven, not only have I known false accusations has been a problem, not only have I been preached stay neutral for a long time, but even me experiencing my own thing makes me say stay neutral, because I know I was this close to just losing everything. Luckily I have an amazing girlfriend now. She knows the story and whatnot. She's great and I'm over it, but because I got falsely accused, the heartbreak took me out, obviously, but because I got falsely accused, I couldn't do romance, intimacy, none of that. That took me out. That type of thing scares you. It really ruins you. It made me not want to do anything like that with anybody else, because I didn't want to risk it again. I didn't want to not only risk being hurt emotionally again, but falsely accused again. It made me think if I were to ever be intimate with somebody, I would have to get a video recording of them saying, yes, I consent, stuff like that. Because it just, being falsely accused is so much mental and emotional damage. You're thinking you're innocent, but you're thinking well, where could they twist it? You're like, was I a dickhead? What, you're thinking what will other people think if they hear about this? Stuff like that. It's mental and emotional abuse. And she emotionally abused me in other ways too. She was an abuser to me, because every time I had an issue with something she was doing, it's, oh, you're insecure. She never gave me a reassurance or anything. Obviously I see that now, and it was stupid I stayed with her for so long, but I wanted to share my false accusation story because, one, I'm comfortable to talk about it now. Two, I think it helps paint the point I'm trying to paint. Stay neutral. Innocent till proven guilty. Because being falsely accused, it sucks. Being sexually assaulted and raped sucks too, but being falsely accused, it sucks. And because of false accusations like White, like Slazo, mine, it goes to show you can't just trust anybody on the internet. And trusting just anybody on the internet is dangerous. Being falsely accused was painful. It was traumatic. It sucks. It's not fun. My heart goes out to any victim of, sexual assault, rape, and even people like me who were falsely accused. My heart goes out to you all, because it's hard, and it's painful, and it sucks. It's just, I just hope, That's my story. I covered damn near everything. Obviously I didn't cover the start of the relationship, but I covered the actual false allegation part and stuff like that. it just... I think the world has forgotten nuance, innocent till proven guilty, and stuff like that. And I feel like people are way too trusting of people when they should be less trusting of people, as more and more people are lying, more and more people are cheating and stuff like that. Innocent till proven guilty. Alright? It's not guilty till it's innocent till proven guilty. Yeah, that's my story. That's what I have to say on these type of things. That's it. See you guys in the next one. Peace.